A 21-year-old lobs a rock at a police car during a moment of peak frustration. For that outburst, the system hands him 2 years behind bars. Compare that to the response when an extremist attempts a beheading in Belfast. Instead of a prison cell, the offender is funneled into a mental health institute. The state treats a violent assault on life as a medical curiosity, while treating a citizen's protest as a threat to be crushed. This is a cannibalistic state. It has moved beyond simple neglect, where it actively feeds on the energy and the virtue of its own people to maintain a facade of control. True leadership exists in a hierarchy of service. At the very top echelon of service, you find the altruists, figures like Mother Teresa, who serve humanity with zero expectation of personal reward. Below the saints, you find functional, localized administrations. They aren't perfect, but they fulfill their basic contract. They use the state's resources strictly to ensure the welfare and independence of the people they represent. The current British state has fallen to the bottom of this hierarchy. It has become an energy vampire, an institution that views a native passport not as a shield for its citizens, but as a liability. This isn't just a string of bad policy choices. This two-tier system is the symptom of a structural failure. When a state begins to consume its own people, it means the foundation it was built upon has been completely removed. To understand why the modern state is failing, we have to look at the sequence of how civilizations are actually built. At Göbekli Tepe, we find evidence that the temple preceded civilization. Thousands of years before humans built cities or mastered agriculture, they gathered to build a place of worship. They established a shared understanding of the divine before they even built a society. British sovereignty followed this exact pattern. It was glued together by a 1,000-year history of a Roman Christian framework. This shared vision provided the moral and legal authority that allowed the state to function as a unified body. Even during the massive political upheaval of 1536, when King Henry VIII broke from Rome, he was careful to keep that Christian vision intact. He knew that the state's legitimacy depended on maintaining that specific spiritual anchor. This reveals the equation of civilization. A shared divine vision is the prerequisite for sovereignty. As long as that foundational variable remains, the state has a reason to exist, and the people have a reason to trust it. When that 1,000-year spiritual meaning is discarded in favor of secular science and modern apathy, the equation breaks. Subtracting the divine doesn't leave a neutral space, it leaves a vacuum. A state that no longer has a core set of values becomes an empty vessel. It loses the cultural boundaries that previously protected it, leaving the nation's identity to warp and dissolve from the inside out. Because nature abhors a vacuum, that empty vessel is immediately filled by whatever ideology is strong enough to flood in. In Britain, that void is being occupied by Islamist values and radical demands that have no interest in the nation's legacy. This ideological replacement effectively rewrites the government's loyalties. The state stops serving the culture that built it and begins serving the new interests that have filled the vacuum. The cannibal state is the logical result of this process. Once God is removed from the equation, the state loses its mandate to protect the people and instead begins to consume them to sustain the void. There are still places where the state fulfills its contract of its citizens, regardless of race or religion, because it still maintains a clear sense of duty to its own people. But in the UK, the vacuum has led to a total loss of trust. We see it in the street-level clashes and the sense of betrayal among a public that no longer feels the state is on their side. If the current system is an empty vessel filled by energy vampires, we have to ask, why are we waiting for elections to fix a mechanism that is already broken? When the state has become a burden rather than a protector, standard politics may no longer be an option. If the democratic process is only facilitating the cannibalization of the people, the system itself may need to be cancelled. The radical alternative is a move away from party politics toward a system of benevolent tyranny. This is a model where the state is governed with absolute strictness, but that power is directed entirely toward the good of the people. We have seen this model succeed. Leaders like Lee Kuan Yew used a tyrannical but benevolent hand to forge a prosperous, unified state out of absolute chaos by putting the survival of the state above political ideology. Western nations have reached a crossroads. They must either restore the foundational meaning that built their civilization, or accept that surviving the vacuum will require a total departure from democracy in favor of a benevolent tyrant who can restore the state's duty to its people.